We've been lied to. You've been lied to. And you're lying to yourself. Everyone's creative. Everyone's an artist. But most importantly, there's nothing special about creative people. So let's talk about it. I'm Simon. I'm a professional artist. I'm a designer. I'm a trained illustrator. I work in marketing, and I make brands, logos, design stuff for mostly small businesses. So I work with a lot of people who are very creative, very imaginative entrepreneurs, people who come up with ideas and build stuff, and then who turn around and tell me they're not creative people. And it's just ridiculous. It doesn't make any sense. I want to help us all redefine what we're talking about when we say creativity. And I want everyone to realize that they actually are creative. So before I can actually talk about this, because I think the moment that I say that, a lot of people's instinct is to not agree, is to push back or explain why, they are actually, no, but like really, I'm like, not. What I want to do is define what I'm talking about when I say creativity, because I think overall we're misdefining what we mean when we say creativity. Creativity isn't just art and art making, right? It's not just poetry and painting and music. Creativity represents something so much more universal and human, and that's where the misconception happens. That's what I want to correct. In my mind, creativity is very broadly just this human capacity to make things, to make ideas and to manifest those ideas in the world in some way. It's a really broad definition, and that's on purpose, right? Because creativity is involved in so much of what we do. Whether you're working in science or in engineering, or you're a teacher, or you do skilled labor, or you just have a hobby, the reality is that people saying they aren't creative are lying. They're lying to themselves, they're lying to the person they're saying that to. And I think most of the time people aren't even aware of it. The way that people talk about creativity is like it's a on or off switch, right? Like it's this binary, you're either creative or you're not. And the reality is, like with so many things, it's a spectrum. I like to think about creativity to help sort of shift the way I think about it in my head, similar to the way we think about intelligence. We use the word intelligence in a couple ways. We can say someone is very intelligent, but we also, broadly speaking, talk about intelligence as this capacity that humans have. We don't really deny that any single human has intelligence. They all are intelligent beings. Some are just smarter or dumber, right? Some are more or less educated. Similar to that, I think all humans are creative. All humans have this capacity for creativity. And the thing we identify as being binary, as some people not being creative and some people being creative, that's actually the spectrum. And we're just arbitrarily cutting it off at some point. Everyone's creative. Everyone can be creative. It's just some people are more artistic, more expressive. They have less of a block. They've had more opportunity to nurture and learn and foster those things. The same way someone with a PhD is also intelligent like someone without one, but maybe more well-educated on a subject. In a lot of ways, the more or less creative you think you are probably has more to do with just how much you were exposed to art as a kid or in your life. It's who had the opportunity, who had the support to become more artistic. But like I said, there's a real misconception there, because artistic qualities, being an artist, artsiness, and creativity are two different things. You're not less creative because you don't feel artistic. You're probably just using your creativity in a different way. By opening up the definition of what we think of as creative, we get to actually talk about creativity and the things beyond it. When you just put a block up and go, well, I'm not creative, I can't do whatever, can't solve this problem, I can't think about this thing, you carry that into the rest of the world. And I think that's where we end up with a lot of the roadblocks that we have as a society. I think a lot of people have stopped thinking creatively because they don't realize they can. So why do we do that? Why do we limit who we think of as creative? Why do we take that away from ourselves? I think one big reason is that largely creativity can be incredibly embarrassing. Making things, putting yourself out there, having ideas and sharing them, creating something, spending time on it, it reveals a lot about you. That can be an experience that challenges your ability to sort of be resilient to other people's perception of you. Since we conflate creativity a lot with art, and art actually is very creative, I think it's a useful place to start talking about things. And more than a lot of other creative endeavors, art is at the pinnacle of being incredibly embarrassing. When we're creating art, and especially art that is made for its own sake and isn't commercial art that has some insulating purpose, some justifying reason to be there, but just art for art's sake, it says so much about who you are, and everything that you put into it reveals the inner workings of you, even if you're not really aware of it. And that can be incredibly scary. Often as artists, we don't even understand our own creative impulses all the way. So we're making things and we're putting them out there and we're sharing them. And then if someone asks us why we do it that way, it's very common to feel defensive because you might not actually know the answer. Why do you get defensive? It's because so much of yourself goes into that. It feels very similar to someone asking, why are you the way you are, right? You can draw a lot of pictures for yourself, but ultimately, they aren't going to be fully realized until someone else responds to them and you sort of close the loop on expressing something by expressing it to somebody. And that piece, that kind of full circle, is terrifying. It's horrible. And it can be something that turns people off from wanting to be creative and do creative things. So what do I mean, right? Why don't I give you an example? When I was a younger artist, not even that much younger, but for a lot of my sort of artistic career, artistic journey since I was a kid, I spent a lot of time making kind of meaningless art, things that were sort of shallow and goofy, and that I hadn't put a lot of thought into what it was trying to say. At the time, I sort of viewed that as having a lot of merit. I thought I was doing something kind of noble by creating unpretentious art. What that ended up being was a lot of very defensive and uninteresting work that didn't have a lot to say because I wasn't engaging with what I thought at all. Ultimately, that's fine. It's okay to make art or to create anything that has little intention behind it. But the way that then I would sort of think and talk about it was very similar. I would like really downplay that it meant anything or that I had some sort of motivation behind making it. What I was really doing was just avoiding making a statement about anything because I didn't really know what I thought about things. Over time, I started to get kind of self-conscious about the fact that my work was so self-conscious that it hid from saying anything at all. I didn't know what my values were, and I didn't know what mattered to me. And so none of my work really could say anything about that. When you don't allow yourself to make things with meaning for a long time, it starts to, the creative muscle there starts to sort of atrophy. and you atrophy, atrophy, atrophy.
Atrophy.
The creative muscle starts to sort of atrophy, and you sort of lose the ability to easily express those things from inside you. What I started to recognize was that I did have beliefs, I did have values. There, as I got older and learned more about the world and formed a political identity, I had more to say, but it was really hard for me to put it out there. A kind of simple example of this that I have is 2 posts I did on Instagram a long time ago. And one of them at sort of one end of this peak self-consciousness and the other end as I'm starting to break through it. And both of these pieces that I shared, I just did a little drawing and posted on Instagram. It's like most of my use of Instagram. And the first one, the way I captioned it was very sort of self-deprecating and making fun of how unserious the work was. The reality of why I made that drawing was just that I got like some new Photoshop brushes and I was trying them out. And I did a little drawing and I thought the drawing was kind of good and I wanted to share it with people. But instead of saying that, I say, oh, like this is really important art or something like that. And I sort of am like preemptively withdrawing my opinion about anything with that. The other piece is no more meaningful, right? It's also a little drawing, a doodle, if you will. But in this piece, I share it and I just acknowledge, hey, I've got this new little app on my iPad for animating stuff and I'm having a lot of fun with it. And here's a little cartoon I did. And the difference between these two is so stark to me. The second one is so much more honest about what I'm interested in, right? In this case, a new tool to make some art. The other one was almost exactly the same motivation. They're very similar works of art. But I couldn't say that about it. All this is just to say that being a creative person, even when you've drawn your whole life and people acknowledge your creativity and you get support and you get told that you're good at the things that you do, you still can find being creative extremely vulnerable. And a lot of our impulses are to protect that and to hide it. I don't think that's a good thing. When we create things, we are usually doing it to share with people. Even if we're just making something for ourselves, there's sort of 2 people in that transaction. The target audience of your thing isn't you making the thing, it's you on the other side of having made it. Similarly, basically any other creative thing we do has sort of a creator and audience relationship there. And so that performance, that reveal, and the ensuing sort of vulnerability that comes with it, it's universal. This doesn't change if you're someone who is opening a restaurant or you're someone who's giving a PhD defense, or is that how you say that? Defending your PhD? I don't have a PhD. Or you're someone who is renovating someone's house, or you're working in government and you're trying to make something happen for people. You're a speechwriter or you're writing legislation. All of these things are about communicating with another person. When you put yourself out there that way, there's so much fear baked in. Basically, the creative process becomes you make a thing, you put it out there, and people react to it. And that is sort of the flow no matter what. And that can be really scary. In our heads, we're usually really worried that people are going to not respond well. They're going to say it's bad or we're bad or that there's something wrong with it. Ideally, what we're all sort of hoping for is that we make something and people tell us it's good and that we're good and that we have value. But then ultimately, I think what happens for a lot of people and what becomes the more scary thing is you put yourself out there and nobody responds. There's so much of ourselves in the things we create that a lack of response is almost worse. And I think a lot of people have very early experience with that in their lives, where they make a thing or they say a thing, they have an idea, and it kind of goes unnoticed. And all that energy that went into sort of making it and then putting it out there, and there just being nothing, it's so embarrassing for yourself. So if everyone's creative, then where is this like duality we all seem to know exists? Where does that come from? There are people who we point at and go, that's a creative person, and that's not a creative person. So like, what is that? Ultimately, I think the difference between creative people and not creative people are just people who have had the sort of infrastructure around them to go through a lot of that embarrassment and become resilient to it, and either not give a shit about it or grow to really enjoy the thrill of sharing things, or to become very practiced at what they do so that they trust that the things that they make are good and the fear is diminished. Creative people aren't more creative. We're just creative more often. We're just more practiced at putting ourselves out there. When people tell me that they're not creative, I think the truth is that you are creative, you're just self-conscious. And it's easier to just remove yourself from the equation altogether and be like, hey, that's not me, than to acknowledge, yeah, I actually have ideas and opinions, but I'm scared and I don't want to share them. That's what we're speaking about, if we're being honest, when we say, I'm not like that. I'm not a creative person. On the other hand, I think a lot of people also just mean I'm not artistic. I can't draw. Those two lies people are saying when they say I'm not creative, those cause bigger problems than I think people realize. You might not be practiced at drawing or educated in drawing, but that doesn't mean you're not a creative person. And similarly, you might not have engaged a lot with your values or your ideas and shared them a lot, but that doesn't mean you don't have them. I've seen this firsthand in my work and just in my life so many times that I just know this to be true about people, that they'll say, I'm not creative, and then when their guard's down, they'll spit out incredibly creative ideas, or they'll make incredibly creative things. Someone might tell me I'm not very creative, and also be someone who started their own business, builds things with their hands every day, helps solve problems for other people, and is ultimately an incredibly creative person, but they just don't let themselves see themselves that way. This is what I think people mean when they say, let's start this over. There's a big can of worms. This is what I think people mean when they say AI democratizes art or creativity. I find that statement to just be hopelessly bleak. We're talking about democratizing a thing that is so universal to the human experience. It would be like democratizing breathing or thought. The thing people actually mean there is that it makes them feel more able to engage with creativity. A lot of that fear people have is around being told they're bad or bad at a thing. And especially with art making, drawing, painting, music, singing a song, whatever, people are ashamed of themselves if they're not already really good at those things. It's something to apologize for, to not be good at drawing or to not be a good singer, carry a tune, whatever. When the reality in my mind and my experience is that everybody could become good at those things if they were given the opportunity and had the interest in practicing them. It's okay if you don't want to draw, right? Like, that doesn't make you not creative. It also means you're not going to magically be good at it, though. All the best artists in the world get that way through doing it a lot. every overnight success, every brilliant genius, even every prodigy child is announced and declared to be that after years of practice in what they do. The thing that AI democratizes is that work, right? It's that ability to produce something that is clean and not ugly. I mean, debatably, it's very ugly, but it seems polished, right? You're not going to generate a story with ChatGPT and it be riddled with spelling errors and bad grammar. The reality is that's not democratizing art. That's not democratizing creativity. That's just a shortcut hack to getting to something that seems more professional. That's what people actually mean. Democratizing art isn't a thing, but making it easier to draw a picture that looks good and isn't embarrassing to me. That's what people mean. That statement and what people find appeal in, I think, about generative AI, other than like it being this weird efficiency thing to make a bunch of slop. The democratizing piece is just that it's a embarrassment insulator. It's a way of avoiding using your creative impulse and creating something ugly and bad. It's a way of skipping the line on the practice and avoiding admitting to yourself that you're not good at something. Why I think that's actually kind of great and brilliant is because it proves my point for me, right? So many people engage with these generative tools because they're all very creative people. And they all have ideas in their head and they all want to do something with them. But the amount of effort that goes into getting good at those things, most people aren't going to do. I'm not a very good poet. I'm definitely not a very good musician. But I don't think that that means I'm not creative because I have this other artistic outlet with my work. But I know that if I wanted to get really good at music, I could put in hours of effort and practice and get good at it. I think what people mean when they say that AI democratizes art is that it gives them a way of exercising that creative impulse without making something bad and it's something that they need to be embarrassed about. It protects you in a couple ways. It protects you from making an ugly thing or something that is obviously technically poor, but it also gives you an out, right? If someone asks why the picture you made with a generative AI tool looks the way it does, you can always just say, well, that's what the AI did. So while you might claim, look at this art I made with Midjourney, the second that someone tries to critique it, you get to also turn around and go, well, but hey, Midjourney did that, not me. So you get this like double layered 2 panes of glass protection that nobody is going to immediately tell me this looks ugly the way my drawing might. And nobody can question my expression of my creative impulse because ultimately it wasn't mine. It becomes this way of hiding from having to put in the work to make something that's up to your own standards and having to say something honestly and reveal something about yourself. It's a creative shield. And ultimately, all it democratizes is making a lot of meaningless shit. So why does this matter? Why do I need to dispel this myth, right? Like, why should everyone realize they're creative? And what's the benefit there? We all know what we're talking about when I go, oh, look at this drawing I did. And people go, oh, I wish I could do that, but I'm not very creative. Why? Like, I'm not going to then turn around and be like, actually, you are very creative. You just need to believe in yourself. Maybe I should do that. The biggest benefit, I think, to making this change that would happen sort of like for humanity is that the more people admit they actually are creative, the more people will feel comfortable also admitting that too. I have a crude metaphor, which is that creativity is very embarrassing, like I just went through, right? So a lot of people want to avoid that embarrassment. So here's my crude analogy. It's like if one person shits their pants in a room full of people, that's horrifyingly embarrassing. Everyone's going to want to get away from that person. Everyone's going to think they're weird. The person's going to be ashamed of themselves. But the second two people shit their pants in the same room, we all realized like there was something really bad about the catering. The shame is reduced, and we accept that something happened there. That's just a human biological thing. Nothing's really changed in those two circumstances except that two people did an embarrassing thing instead of one. And I think creativity fundamentally is a lot like that, like shitting your pants. You see it as easier when you see other people do it. That's where the sort of opportunity of being a person who already seems creative kind of came from, right? Like, I'm an artist largely because my dad and my mom are both creative people. My dad was a professional artist when I was a kid, so I knew that was a legitimate thing to do. And his mom, my grandmother, was steeped in the arts. She worked in art galleries, and she worked for designers, and she had her own store full of art. And so art was always seen as legitimate and as a thing that you didn't need to be ashamed of wanting to do. So ultimately, being creative was easy for me because there was no stigma around it. It also helps that I had a lot of opportunity, right? Even though we weren't rich because my dad was a professional artist, we also weren't going hungry. And so, yeah, I got to go to school in art school, and I didn't have to struggle in order to make that happen. And a lot of people don't go down these paths because life and circumstances don't let them. People make them feel bad for wanting to do those things. They feel ashamed about it. We don't see it as productive largely in society. And so all of these things act as barriers. And again, I'm just talking about art right now. I'm not actually talking about creativity as I mean it. But I think that's where that mentality comes from. So the more we admit, hey, actually, that mechanic over there is a really creative guy, but also that mechanic over there goes, hey, all this stuff I'm doing at work every day, solving these problems, fixing these machines, requires a lot of creativity. I'm a creative guy. The more everybody gets to do that, and the more we all do that, the more we acknowledge our internal creative capacity, the more we'll be able to apply that to other things. You might not realize you're a really good problem solver outside of your job where you're a structural engineer or something, but that same thinking could get applied to other problems in your life or in society. And we've got a lot of problems, and we need creative thinking people to start working together to make solutions to those problems. We're not going to get there if we all put a block up and say, well, I don't want to talk about my ideas because I'm afraid no one's going to think they're good. That just gets us more of the same shit. So ultimately, that's why I started talking about things this way. That's why I started my newsletter, which you can subscribe to. But it's also why I've shifted like the way I use language and don't talk about creatives as like a class of people anymore, and instead say maybe creative professional or artistic people. Acknowledging that everyone's creative and talking about it more will hopefully make things better for all of us. Acknowledging it for yourself, sharing that idea with people, encouraging the people around you to be creative, and then collectively us all working on using creativity for good and not for evil or for status quo. That's kind of the that's the goal. That's where we're going. Look over there. It's the utopia, but we can't get there unless we all make something together. Normalizing creativity is so important. We need to take the idea that creativity is up here and it's this it's wonderful jewel that some people get the opportunity to hold. No, it's so boring. It's so mundane. Everyone's got it. And some of us use it well and some of us don't. The other thing I think is really important is for creative people to acknowledge this truth for themselves too. I think a lot of people like me in my position who had kind of an easy time feeling like they're creative, it can sometimes feel like someone's trying to take that away if they do something creative that's not very good or doesn't align with your values, right? And so it's easy to want to gatekeep and go, well, that's not art. That's not creative. Oh, like working in a restaurant, that's not creative. Like that's just working a job. Being a contractor, that's not very creative. Like I'm really creative. I do paintings of naked people in a big room with a bunch of other people. That kind of gatekeeping only makes things harder for everybody, and it only grows resentment for artists and creative people. Creative, always with quotes. People deserve to express themselves too. Like the fact that so many people are kind of living in this state of self-repression where they're not vocalizing their opinions, it means, first of all, we're not hearing from a lot of people who might have really good ideas. Second of all, it means we're not practicing making our ideas better and challenging them. So a lot of people are walking around with bad ideas that never get better because they never share them with anybody. Part of how your ideas improve is through sharing them and through being embarrassed by them. Because sometimes you say, you would be a good idea, and you put it out there. You realize in real time that wouldn't be a good idea. People not feeling okay expressing themselves means they're not getting that practice in. So yeah, if we all stop gatekeeping creativity, then we'll all feel better, we'll be happier, and we'll all get more creative. Frankly, we just need more creative people. We have a world full of creative people, and we just need more people to acknowledge that that's the case. We've got a lot of problems in the world. They need creative solutions. We need things built that don't exist. We need things said that will help inspire more people to do more things. And while a lot of creative things are happening in the world, there's a lot of people not participating in that. That doesn't mean they can't or that their ideas aren't valid. It just means that they are avoiding putting themselves out there. I'm not talking about everyone becoming like a painter. Again, creativity isn't art. And so this isn't about taking a drawing class, although I'd recommend it if you want to do it. This is about people bringing this mentality of creativity and their own value and the ideas that they have and their opinions to whatever they're doing. Wherever you can contribute and work on making things better or improving things, that's needed. And you're not going to help anybody, especially not yourself, by just being scared. So ultimately, I'm sorry to have to say it, but you are creative. What are you going to do with it? I think that's it. Do you have anything else to say? Yeah, I think that's it. Thanks for listening to me. If you want to follow along, learn more about it, Everyone's Creative is a thing I'm already working on in written form. But I don't think I really like writing that much on its own. So I'm trying to make something that's a little more in line with what I'm interested in doing. I like talking, and I think I'm good at it. So that's the way I want to express myself instead of just with essays. But anyway, I'm still going to use my newsletter, and it's a good way to keep up with whatever I'm doing. I'm also working on a new website. Something that I never appreciated was so creative for a long time was programming and web design. And I've been really enjoying not using Squarespace, not using Adobe Portfolio Builder, and building my own site with HTML and CSS and learning how all that works and how you can express yourself with programs and do design programmatically in a digital space. It's really cool. So that new version of my newsletter is coming soon whenever I get to it. But right now I'm on Substack, and you can also follow my personal site, which I designed too. yeah, I don't know. You just make something, man. Like, go do that thing that you wanted to do today that you're not letting yourself do. Do you have a frustrating day? Usually you don't want to make anything when you have a frustrating day. But often doing that can be really great. And if you're procrastinating making something that is important to you, just go work on it for like 5 minutes. And then I think like 3 hours later, you'll realize, that it was worth starting. Whatever. Love you. How do we do it? Is that it? Have a great day. Okay. I'll be done. That wasn't so bad.